So I'm really happy to welcome this week the CEO of Next Big Sound, Alex White. So Alex, hi, and thanks for making it onto the show.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, Next Big Sound is a pretty well-known company already, but just in case people on the other line haven't heard about you, how would you sum up your company in a nutshell?
Well, Next Big Sound is a music intelligence company, and we measure the growth and popularity of hundreds of thousands of artists across all the main web properties, and we sell a centralized dashboard to professionals in the music industry that they can use to make decisions that drive their business. So we track MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Wikipedia, Vivo, etc., but also let our customers tie in sales information, radio, P2P data, and other sorts of things, so they can see everything in one place.
And I'm always interested when I interview startups like yourselves to understand, where you come from and how did you ended up starting the company. So when did it start out, and how did you get inspiration to start it?
Sure. Well, I've been around music my whole life. My dad's a professional cellist and played in bands and worked at a recording studio in high school, and then got much more into the business side of things. I interned at Universal Records in New York and then Chicago, booked shows at Northwestern in Chicago where I went to school, ran a radio program, etc. And I ended up going out on tour, helping manage a band that was signed to Epitaph, and I was tasked with building and maintaining all the different profile pages for that band. And as soon as I'd built the MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., I quickly realized that I had no idea what was working and what wasn't working, and I was going around each day and writing down the number of times that people had viewed or commented on different things and trying to figure out what was the most effective mix and way to promote and raise awareness for the band. That was kind of the impetus for Next Big Sound. We launched in August of 2009 and raised a venture financing round about a month after that. Yeah.
And in terms of how you amass the data that you have, what kind of sources do you get, and did you find it was easy to collaborate with the sources that you have for the data?
Good question. It's a mix of using the APIs that are publicly available, or in some cases direct partnerships where they're dumping us data directly, and some cases just indexing. All we're looking at is the publicly facing number. So if a band has 2,000 Twitter followers on one day and 2,100 the next day, we're plotting the difference on a line graph. And data sources, especially as we've become as our customer base has grown and become more of a industry standard, the data sources, we're constantly approached by new data sources wanting to have their data in front of these music industry professionals. We're not competing with any of these data sources. We're not consumer facing. We're not another streaming music site or anything like that. We're simply tracking it. So it's kind of a stamp of legitimacy for a lot of these data sources to be seen alongside the top music portals on the web.
Next Big Sound is certainly a company that tracks globally the presence of artists online. So was that always the vision for the company, or did you start out tracking mostly American artists in the States and then kind of realize the potential for the company?
To be honest, we started just tracking. We seeded our database by just crawling all the various social networks and seeing, hey, this band is friends with this band, and adding that. And then doing a lot of auto association programmatically, saying the tricky part is detecting, which band is, band name X on MySpace, but their band name Music on Facebook, and their, some abbreviation on Twitter. And so we did as good a job as we could programmatically on making those associations. But one of the smartest things we did was let anyone with a free account edit the URLs and the profiles and say, hey, actually, Kesha's Twitter handle is actually Kesha Sucks, which is and no computer could be able to tell you that. And so we get thousands of edits and bands added to the system to begin with. So there's never any kind of geographical limitations placed on the bands we tracked. It was all kind of global from the beginning, and it's only recently after Meetem that starting to broaden our focus to incorporate data sources that are popular in other countries and expand beyond the large base we built in the US.
Yeah, and in terms of the way that you track the data, you can, bands can sign up to track their own data, and that's naturally very useful for them. But there's also a competitive element of the next big sound engine, because people can actually sign up and look at how the competition is doing, or look how similar artists are doing, where are they doing well, and kind of try and get into their steps in a way. Is that something that you're seeing more and more?
Exactly, and that's kind of one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've heard, is how useful the comparison engine is, and the fact that we are tracking such a wide range of artists for such a long period of time now. Because inherently, if I tell you that Two Door Cinema Club added 2,685 new fans across MySpace, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., no one really, on its own, no one really knows what that means. And so the comparison engine is just the easiest and quickest way to provide context around that. So when I say that, well, Jesse J, who was just added to BBC's most artist to watch list, added fewer fans than Two Door Cinema Club, that gives you some perspective. Whereas if you compare Two Door Cinema Club to Lady Gaga, you can see that they're dwarfed by her online activity. But we're also hearing just great stories about artists going to, say, a radio programmer and showing a screenshot of our graphs where they say they put in their band and 3 other bands, and the other 3 bands are getting radio airplay, but the one band isn't, but has more online activity. So they're making a case for themselves and using the data in their online numbers to justify radio spins in the kind of terrestrial radio world.
Yeah, sure. And the company had a great reception from the very beginning. Were you surprised at the fact that this was such a needed tool from the music community, or did you expect something in the region of what you got?
We didn't expect nearly the amount of kind of positive reception and quick adoption that we saw. We did know that we were solving a very real problem, and that it was a very big problem. And this was because we worked very closely with a dozen band managers over the summer of 2009 while we were developing the product. And they were telling us, these are very savvy managers that were tracking all these numbers by hand and trying to make sense of it. And so we understood that we'd hit on a huge pain point, and this would be a huge time saver. Combined with helping them make sense of it was really the promise of the Premiere platform. And that's why we knew we were solving a real issue. So it's exceeded our kind of wildest expectations, especially all the kind of accolades and big customers we've signed up. But it's been an exciting ride.
And in terms of getting into the nitty-gritty of the actual business model and how the process works for you guys, what is the breakdown in terms of types of customers that you can have on your platforms as premium customers, going from like the individual band to a huge record label, for example?
Yeah, the people that really, really love us and were our earliest advocates and users and ultimately paying customers are the digital managers at management firms and record labels. Yeah. Because if you have an artist roster of 5 or even more than 1 that you're responsible for, it literally becomes overwhelming to manage all these digital properties. I mean, even if you're a single band with 5 different sites that you want to track, that's a huge time suck. And so our earliest customers are these, forward-looking labels like Domino Records, and we have one major label customer and varying stages with other majors as well. And it's kind of runs the full gamut. And then we have, individual artists signing up for the $10 per artist per month package on our site. And so it's a subscription service, recurring monthly.
In terms of your partnership with Billboard, how did that come about? And can you talk a little bit about your top 50 chart that you make for them?
Sure. Well, it really became... it was kind of an obvious partnership when you think about it, because they are synonymous with the charts and tracking music data, although most of their... And we track, data about music consumption. And these numbers online are getting, just too big to ignore. And so it's great that a company like Billboard with such a storied history can change and adapt to the times. So that's why we were really excited when we started talking about the Social 50. and it was kind of a joint development in terms of the charts in which metrics and data sources were important and relevant to look at, and they have a very rigorous statistical analysis team and charting division, and we have similarly a lot of stats and math folks on the team, and so kind of working together very closely to develop the algorithm behind the Social 50.
Yeah. And did the results surprise you in terms of the artists that are featured on this chart? Because I remember when Big Champagne came out with their ultimate chart, the results were very much similar to the ones that were in the commercial charts as well. So how did the results seem to you?
Well, Justin Bieber's the number one artist on the Social 50.
Yeah.
And his stat, I think he's been number one almost every week that we've run it. His numbers are just too big to believe sometimes. But we had someone on our team ran a comparison between the Social 50, the Billboard top albums, and the Ultimate chart, and found about a 50% overlap across all of them. So it is this, transitory time that we're in, and the sales piece tells one story, and the social media tells a similar story, but there are some differences. There are a few artists that just have massive amounts of, say, YouTube activity, but that hasn't translated into traditional kind of metrics of success like sales and radio. If you think about even Justin Bieber would have been likely on the Social 50 chart before he was signed to Usher's label and album released, and kind of had scored the number one album for my world because he was a YouTube sensation, 10 million views before he got picked up and signed to a major.
And in terms of the going beyond the top 50, is this a tool that can be used, for example, by A&R guys to understand what are the up-and-coming bands that they should be looking out for or trying to sign? And have you seen something along those lines happening? Yeah,
the other chart that's really interesting is our chart called the Next Big Sound 25, and that plots the fastest accelerating artists across the internet and the ones that are statistically most likely to become the next big sound.
Yeah. And
so these are the ones that that are accelerating quickly. But we've been approached by I think every single A&R department on the planet about wanting exclusive access to a chart. But you probably aren't making signing decisions off of these public charts. We hope we can surface a lot of interesting new acts. But the real product behind there and the real business is an A&R impactor product where you can filter and search up-and-coming bands, narrowing it down by which metrics you're interested in and that you think are most wanting to weight heavily, and which geographic regions you're interested in, what type of music, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And quite a few companies are starting to look into semantic analysis as well. So on top of the numbers, actually looking at what other people saying about the band and trying to create algorithms that can understand the comments in terms of positive or negative. Is it something that you're interested in doing?
It's obviously very alluring, because if you can translate the actual words that people say and assign sentiment rank to it, that's an obvious huge business, and that's why there's millions of dollars of venture capital invested in hundreds of companies trying to solve exactly that. We are approached all the time about companies that have a sentiment engine or semantic analysis, natural language processing, and if you ever find one that actually works, I'd love to talk to them, and we'll integrate it and tie it in with everything else that we track.
Yeah.
But until then, every time I type in "this band is awesome!" ! Just kidding, they're god awful, and that always return sarcasm just fools 100% of these things, and so it's a huge challenge, and we're constantly on the lookout for that new technology, but just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, sure. And you mentioned that Medium was your first proper international outing, and you actually won the B2B category as best startup at the conference. So how do you find that experience, and what was the reaction from both the artist music side and from the other startups that were with you?
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. It was my first Medium, so had called a few other folks that had been going for many years and kind of told me how I should set my schedule and that sort of thing. Yeah. I also didn't know what really winning the category would do in terms of exposure, but it was the impact was immediate. Right after I got off stage, I was literally wiped out of business cards, and I brought hundreds, and spent the afternoon, had to cancel and move a bunch of meetings because I was doing interviews with foreign press and getting picture taken and meeting with director of Meetem and doing all of these things. So on the business side, it's just a huge stamp of credibility for us. I mean, in the same way that, the Social 50, the relationship with Billboard provides an immediate stamp of credibility in the international community. Winning B2B Meetem category is just a great way to start out the presentation or any presentation. Sure. As we sign up more and more international record labels and management firms. And then on the artist side, I mean, two of the first people who came up to me after my presentation were Taylor and Isaac Hansen from the Hansen brothers, who were there on behalf of their own record label that they've started, and we ended up grabbing drinks, and they wanted to learn more about what we were doing, and just kept commenting how needed it was in the industry.
Sure. And in terms of, where do you see yourself going in the next few months? Is there anything in development that you would like to preview or talk about that you're particularly excited about?
We're letting our, customer, as we've done since we first launched, letting our customers kind of tell us exactly what is most valuable to them and what's valuable enough to pay for and what can really move the needle for their business. So that's what we're focused on, and that's a lot more data around charts and more advanced geographic applications and better alerts, and kind of just tweaking that intelligence layer on top of all this data, because as soon as you see it all in one place, you need to know which things you should be looking at now that you have everything there. So exciting few months of product development in terms of Next Big Sound premiere. And a lot more stuff in the pipeline. Yeah,
sure. And I just wanted to end by asking you, I like to trace, a map of the startup community as well. And, you're based in Denver, in Colorado, which is kind of an unusual location, I guess, for a startup that works in music. So how did you find that?
We were based in Chicago because that's where myself and co-founders went to university, but ended up moving to Boulder as part of a Techstars program where they take 10 companies and give them office space, legal assistance, small amount of money, and mentorship. It's a fantastic program, and our lead investor is actually still here in Boulder, and there's, more and more started to hear about Boulder as a tech scene and a huge booming startup community, because I can't walk down the street without tripping over 5 startup companies and a startup lawyer and a venture capital. I mean, it's a very vibrant community here. I'm in New York and LA every month or so, and on the phone with our customers the remainder of the time, so still close and at all the conferences. But it's a great place for a tech team and a development team to very kind of picturesque. I'm looking out my office now with a view of the mountains, and
nice.
And a great place to build a company.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to seeing the developments for Next Big Sound.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.